The stars shone like silver dust in the endless black ocean. Among them moved the great Cathari starship Kelanthara, a vessel of pure grace and logic. It glided through the void with no sound, no flame, only the silent hum of power and purpose. Inside it lived beings who believed themselves to be the wisest in the galaxy. The Cathari, scholars of peace and order. Ambassador Valara, one of the senior Cathari scholars, stood before the wide window of her quarters. Her large silver eyes reflected the stars as she studied the blue planet ahead. Earth. She had read countless reports about this young species called humans. They were curious, emotional, and reckless. They built wonders and destroyed them in the same breath. They loved fiercely and fought foolishly. Valara found them fascinating but also disappointing. To her mind, true civilization meant balance and calm, qualities the humans lacked. She turned to her assistant, a quiet Cathari youth named Seren. "Have the humans prepared the meeting hall?" she asked in her smooth melodic voice. "Yes, Ambassador," Seren replied. "Their representatives await your arrival. The main speaker is someone named Captain Elias Ward." Valara lifted an eyebrow. "A military officer? For a diplomatic meeting?" "Yes," Seren said softly. "He is also part of their planetary security command. It seems humans often mix their politics with their defense." Valara gave a small sigh. How very primitive. The Kelanthara descended slowly toward Earth's atmosphere. From orbit, Valara could see vast stretches of green and blue, clouds drifting gently above mountains and seas. It was a beautiful world, and raw, unrefined, but alive in every sense. The ship touched down near a human capital city. A delegation waited outside, surrounded by flashing machines that recorded every moment. Valara walked down the ramp, her silver robes flowing in the soft wind. She expected noise. Humans were known to be loud, but the crowd remained respectfully quiet. Cameras turned, reporters whispered, and then she saw him. Captain Elias Ward stood at the center of the welcoming party. He was tall for a human, dressed in a dark uniform with clean lines and a silver badge. His face was calm, his eyes sharp and steady. When he stepped forward, there was no arrogance, only discipline. "Ambassador Valara," he said, extending his hand. "Welcome to Earth." Valara hesitated. The Cathari never used physical contact in greetings, but she had studied human customs and knew it was considered respectful. So she took his hand briefly. It was warm, steady, strong. "Thank you, Captain Ward," she said softly. "It is pleasant to finally meet the voice of Earth's defense." Ward smiled politely. "We're honored to host you. We've prepared the meeting chambers inside." As they walked together, Valara's mind worked quietly. His tone was formal, his words measured. Yet there was something behind his calm, a strength not of muscle but of spirit. She could sense it, though she did not understand it. The first meeting began smoothly. The Cathari delegation presented their proposals for human inclusion in the Galactic Concord. Valara explained the rules. Peace above all, logic before emotion, and respect for all species. The humans listened carefully. Their scientists asked questions about trade, communication, and technology. Their politicians spoke about cooperation and friendship. But when a human general asked about military cooperation, the Cathari advisors stiffened. Valara raised her hand gently. "The Concord values peace," she said. "We do not encourage the use of weapons. Our worlds have lived for centuries without war." The humans nodded politely, but Ward remained quiet. He did not speak through most of the session. He only observed. His gaze seemed to measure every person in the room, including her. When the meeting ended, Ward approached her. "You believe war can be ended," he said simply. Valara turned to him. "It has been for the Cathari. We evolved beyond violence long ago." He gave a faint smile, not mocking but thoughtful. "I hope we get there one day. But peace doesn't exist by itself. Someone has to protect it." Valara frowned slightly. "Protection leads to conflict, Captain. Conflict breeds war. Logic ends where emotion begins." Ward looked at her for a moment, then nodded respectfully. "Maybe, but emotion is what makes us human. And sometimes it's what keeps us standing." Valara watched him walk away, feeling an unexpected unease. She had studied thousands of species. None had ever left her speechless after a simple sentence. Later that night, Valara sat in her private cabin aboard the Kelanthara. The stars shone outside her window, peaceful and eternal. She dictated her daily report to the Concord archives. Day 1. Humanity shows potential for growth but remains ruled by emotion. Their defense officer, Captain Elias Ward, displays strong leadership yet clings to primitive concepts of honor and sacrifice. I do not believe these people possess true warriors, only soldiers who fight without understanding why. She paused, thinking of Ward's eyes, calm yet burning, disciplined yet alive. She shook her head and closed the report. Emotions are noise, she told herself. They cloud reason. The next morning, Valara joined Ward on a guided tour of Earth's orbital stations. From the viewing deck, she could see the curve of the planet below. It glowed with light and color like a living jewel. Ward stood beside her, hands folded behind his back. Beautiful, isn't it? Valara nodded. It is. Chaotic beauty, wild, uncontrolled. He smiled faintly. That's life, Ambassador. It's never perfect, but it's precious because of that. She studied him again. You speak like a philosopher, Captain. Not a soldier, Ward chuckled softly. Maybe that's because soldiers don't last long unless they learn to think. Valara found herself almost smiling, an unusual reaction for her kind. But the moment passed quickly. Still, your people have fought many wars. Doesn't that trouble you? His eyes grew distant. Every war leaves scars, but sometimes scars remind us who we are. You can't erase your past. You can only decide what you'll do next. Valara turned away, pretending to study the stars, but his words lingered in her mind like echoes in a quiet hall. That evening, the humans hosted a small dinner for the Cathari delegation. The air was filled with music and laughter. Humans spoke freely, their joy open and unrestrained. The Cathari, graceful and calm, observed quietly. Valara felt both admiration and confusion. How could these noisy, impulsive beings have survived so long? How did they build cities that reached the clouds and ships that touched the stars, while still holding on to such raw emotion? When Ward raised a glass to toast new beginnings, everyone smiled. Valara did too, but her mind whispered doubts. She thought of her people. Precise, peaceful, predictable. Then she looked at the humans. Loud, flawed, but alive. And for the first time, she wondered if perfection was overrated. Later that night, Valara returned to her ship. The city lights below glittered like 1,000 small stars. She stood silently, thinking about the humans' strange mix of strength and chaos. Serene approached quietly. Ambassador, what do you think of them? Valara hesitated before answering. They are more complex than I expected. Emotional, yes. But there is something beneath their emotions, a kind of stubborn hope. Do you believe they will join the conquered? Siren asked. Valara looked toward the horizon. If they do, it will not be because they are peaceful, she said softly. It will be because they refuse to be broken. She turned away, her silver robe glimmering under the ship's soft light. Outside, the earth turned slowly beneath her, a fragile world full of sound and fire, life and heart, and somewhere down there, Captain Elias Ward looked up at the same sky, unaware that soon, everything Valara believed about humanity would be tested. The calm scholar from the stars did not yet know that she would soon see what true courage looked like, not in logic or peace, but in one human's unbreakable will to stand when all else fell. The world of new series shone like a tiny blue gem on the edge of the galactic map. It was a new human colony, young, full of promise, and alive with hope. Vast green plains stretched across its surface, dotted with silver mining stations and glass-domed towns. It was humanity's dream of expansion beyond Earth, a fresh start among the stars. Ambassador Valara had visited many worlds in her long career, but none fascinated her quite like this one. New Series was rough, untamed, and full of life. Its people smiled easily, spoke loudly, and worked with hands hardened by effort. It was so different from the calm, organized worlds of the Cathari. She stood beside Captain Elias Ward as their shuttle descended through the planet's soft clouds. Below them, the colony city glittered under the afternoon sun. You built all this in just 10 years? Valara asked with quiet surprise. Ward nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon. We built it with hope and stubbornness, he said. That's humanity in 2 words. Valara gave a small smile. Hope is admirable. Stubbornness can be dangerous. He glanced at her. Sometimes it's the same thing. The shuttle touched down near the colony's main plaza. A crowd had gathered. Miners, engineers, and children waving little flags. Music played from old speakers, cheerful and warm. Humanity was welcoming its guests with open hearts. Valara looked around, studying the scene carefully. These people, they live simply, Ward smiled. They live honestly. Every wall, every street here, someone built it with their own hands. We don't always have perfection, Ambassador, but we have heart. That sentence stayed in her mind even as the celebrations began. The official purpose of their visit was peaceful. The Galactic Concord wanted to evaluate the colony's stability before approving full membership for Earth and its settlements. Valara was to observe, report, and judge whether humans were ready to join the interstellar community. She spent the first day inspecting schools, energy plants, and laboratories. Everywhere she went, humans welcomed her warmly. They were curious about the Cathari, about her silver skin and calm tone. A group of children even asked her if all Cathari spoke like singing birds. Valara laughed softly for the first time in years. At night, she met Ward again near the colony wall. The air was cool and filled with the scent of new grass. The twin moons of New Ceres hung low in the sky, painting everything in silver light. Ward looked out into the fields. Tomorrow the Concord inspectors arrive, he said. You'll have what you need. Valara nodded. Yes, your people have done well. Still, I see tension in their eyes, he sighed. That's because we're far from home. Every new world carries risk. But we manage, Valara tilted her head. You sound confident, Captain. I have to be, he said quietly. If I'm not, they'll lose hope. There it was again, that word, hope. Valara wondered why humans used it so often. Her people spoke of logic, progress, and harmony, but never hope. Perhaps it was something only a fragile species could understand. The next morning began with sunlight and calm. By noon, it turned into fire. It started as a shadow in the sky, distant at first, then growing fast. Sirens screamed across the colony. Valara stepped out of the meeting hall just as explosions flashed on the horizon. Black smoke curled into the clouds. Ward's communicator buzzed sharply. Unidentified ships entering orbit, a voice shouted through static. They're not conquered vessels and they're Dracal raiders. Valara froze. The Dracal, a violent race of conquerors that had terrorized the frontier for decades. The Cathari knew them well. Centuries ago, even their mighty fleets had fled from the Dracul's ruthless attacks. Ward's expression hardened instantly. Get the civilians underground, he ordered, now! Valara tried to stay calm, but her voice trembled. You cannot fight them. The Dracul will destroy everything. We must surrender and call for aid. Ward turned sharply toward her. No, if we surrender, they'll take every soul here. We hold until reinforcements arrive. He ran toward the command post and Valara followed, unable to stop herself. The colony streets were chaos. Alarms blaring, people shouting, children crying. Yet amid the panic, humans were moving with purpose. Men and women in mining suits grabbed rifles and ran to join the defense. Engineers welded makeshift barriers. Valara watched in disbelief. These are not soldiers, she said. Ward answered without slowing down. They are now. Inside the control room, maps lit up with red warnings. The Dracul ships descended from orbit like dark meteors. Ward barked quick orders. Activate the shield grid. Get the outer cannons online. Evacuate the northern sector. Valara's heart raced. Her training told her to remain logical, but the sheer energy of the humans overwhelmed her. Everyone moved quickly, following orders without question. They fight with chaos, she whispered. Ward glanced at her. No, they fight with trust. That's our order. Moments later, the first attack hit. A shockwave rolled through the colony as enemy fire struck the outer wall. Dust and debris filled the air. Ward steadied himself and spoke into the comm. All units, hold the line. Remember, civilians first. Through the windows, Valara saw fire streaking across the sky. Human ships, small and outnumbered, rose to meet the Dracal fleet. One by one, they were destroyed. Yet more kept launching. Ward turned to her. Ambassador, get to the shelters. This isn't your fight. She shook her head, voice trembling. It is now. I cannot abandon those who trusted me. Ward gave her a quick, respectful nod. Then stay close. Hours passed like minutes. The battle spread through the city. The Dracal landed heavy troops, their dark armor glinting under the red sky. The ground trembled as explosions tore through the streets. Valara saw humans fighting on every corner, miners firing rifles from rooftops, engineers using welding torches as weapons, even medics carrying the wounded through falling debris. They fought not with precision but with courage. Ward led from the front, calm and steady. He never shouted in panic, only gave clear, firm commands. When a line broke, he was the first to patch it. When a soldier fell, he was the one who lifted them up. Valara had studied many armies in history. She had seen great generals and heroes in hollows and archives, but none like this. This human fought not for power, but for people. When the Dracal pushed deeper into the colony, Ward ordered a retreat to the inner square. "Form the line here," he called. "Protect the civilians." Valara ran beside him, her heart pounding. The sound of battle echoed like thunder. She watched a young human soldier stumble, frightened. Ward reached out, steadying him. "Breathe," he said softly. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's standing your ground anyway." The soldier nodded, his hands trembling, then lifted his weapon and returned to the fight. Valara felt something stir deep within her chest. It was not logic. It was something older, something she had almost forgotten existed. By evening, the colony was covered in smoke. The humans had pushed the Dracal back again and again, but they were exhausted. Supplies were running low. The communication link to orbit was jammed. Ward stood at the edge of the plaza, his uniform torn, face streaked with dust. Yet his eyes still burned with that same quiet strength. Valara approached him carefully. "You cannot win," she said. "Logic demands retreat." Ward wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Logic doesn't raise children, Ambassador. People do. And I'm not leaving them." She stared at him. "You would die for them?" He looked at her calmly. "I'd live for them. But if dying keeps them safe, then yes." Valara fell silent. For the first time in her long life, she could not answer. Night came. The fires of the city glowed against the dark sky. Humans moved quietly, preparing for another wave. Some were wounded, others weary, but none gave up. Valara stood beside Ward, looking out at the stars. "You said hope and stubbornness built this world," she whispered. "Now I understand." He smiled faintly. "It's not that complicated, Ambassador. Hope keeps us going. Stubbornness keeps us standing." She looked at him, her voice soft. "You are different from what I imagined." Ward chuckled quietly. "So are you." Above them, the enemy fleet shifted again. The next attack would come soon. Valara knew the fight was far from over. As she turned to leave, she glanced once more at the human captain. Steady, calm, unyielding. In that moment, she realized something powerful. Humans did not fight because they loved war. They fought because they loved peace, and they refused to let anyone take it from them. The sky over New Ceres burned with the red glow of battle. Smoke rose from broken streets, twisting into clouds that hid the sun. The Dracal raiders had grown bolder. Their ships hovered low in orbit, ready to strike again. On the ground, their armored troops moved with precision, breaking through every obstacle in their path. The human defenders were exhausted. The miners, engineers, and scientists who had taken up arms were battered, wounded, and weary. Still, they stood. At the center of it all was Captain Elias Ward, his uniform torn and dirtied, his face streaked with dust and sweat. He moved calmly through the chaos, giving orders, assisting the wounded and standing wherever the enemy was closest. His presence alone seemed to anchor the human line. Ambassador Valara watched him from behind a makeshift barricade. She had never seen anything like this. Humans, so small and fragile compared to the Cathari, were holding their own against a superior enemy. They did not fight out of anger or desire for conquest. They fought out of determination to protect their homes and families. Valara had expected panic. She had expected surrender. Instead, she saw courage beyond comprehension. The Dracal advanced again, pushing the humans back toward the colony center. Explosions shook the streets and dust filled the air. A young human soldier stumbled, her hands trembling as she tried to reload her weapon. Ward was there in an instant, steadying her. "Focus," he said softly. "Breathe. You are not alone." The soldier nodded, a determined light entering her eyes. She raised her weapon again and fired. The Dracal paused, surprised by the human's resilience. Valara stepped closer, realizing something she had never allowed herself to admit. These humans were warriors. Not the kind trained for glory or conquest, but the kind born to defend what they loved. A sudden explosion rocked the barricade. Debris rained down. Valara was thrown to the ground. She struggled to rise, her silver robes torn. Her communicator crackled with noise from the battle outside. Ward appeared beside her, his hand reaching out. "Stay close," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "Captain," Valara whispered. "They're too strong. We cannot win," Ward shook his head. "It's not about winning. It's about standing. If we fall, the colony falls. If the colony falls, thousands of lives are lost. That's why we fight. That's why we survive." Valara felt a shiver run through her. He spoke as if survival itself was sacred, not power, not glory, but the simple act of standing when others could not. The inner plaza of the colony became the final line. Civilians had been evacuated or hidden in bunkers. Only the human defenders remained, forming a single wall of resistance against the advancing Dracul. They were outnumbered, their weapons inferior, and their energy nearly spent. Ward walked the line, giving encouragement, adjusting positions, and keeping spirits alive. "Remember," he told them, "we fight for our people, not for ourselves. Every moment we hold means someone lives. Every second we endure makes a difference." Valara watched the humans around him. Teachers, engineers, and even children old enough to help carried weapons with purpose. They were no longer ordinary humans. They had become something more. The Dracul commander's voice boomed through a loudspeaker. "Surrender, humans. You cannot stop us," Ward stepped forward. "We are not surrendering. We are standing." The words were simple, but they carried weight. Every human soldier and volunteer felt it deep in their bones. It was a declaration of will, a statement that no matter how dark the storm, they would not yield. Valara found herself holding her breath. This was not a battle fought for victory or revenge. This was a battle fought because humanity refused to break. The Dracul attacked in waves. Their armored troops surged forward, firing energy weapons that cut through the barricades. Explosions threw dust and smoke into the air, and the sound of battle was deafening. Ward moved among his people, calm and steady. He caught a young soldier as she tripped, pulling her to safety before throwing himself behind cover. He guided the wounded to safer positions, offered words of encouragement, and kept the morale of the line alive. Valara realized then that this was what made him extraordinary. The humans did not follow him because of fear or orders. They followed because of trust. Ward had earned their faith, and that trust transformed ordinary people into warriors. A Dracul soldier leapt over a barricade, aiming at a small group of human defenders. Ward saw it and fired, striking the enemy with precise control. Another wave came, and again Ward stood in the thick of it, never faltering, never giving in to panic. Valara felt a mix of awe and fear. She had expected humans to crumble. Instead, she was watching one man hold the line against an overwhelming force, and inspire an army of ordinary humans to do the same. Hours passed like minutes. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the smoke-filled sky in shades of orange and red. The humans' energy was fading, but Ward did not falter. "Hold your positions," he shouted. "We are humanity. We endure." The words were simple, but they echoed through the chaos, reaching every defender. The Dracul paused, perhaps surprised at the humans' determination. But they pressed on. An enemy vehicle crashed through the barricade, and Ward dove to protect the defenders behind it. He lifted a fallen comrade and moved them to safety, then returned to the front line. His uniform was ripped, his body bruised, but his spirit remained unbroken. Valara stood in shock. She had studied thousands of species. She had seen armies crumble under pressure. But she had never seen courage like this. Courage that did not come from superior numbers, superior weapons, or strategy. It came from will, heart, and purpose. She realized finally what she had been blind to. Humans were not weak. They had no vast fleets or perfected discipline, but they had something far more powerful. The refusal to give up when everything seemed lost. Night deepened. Fires burned through parts of the colony, casting flickering shadows. Ward continued to move along the line, giving orders and support. Valara followed him, her mind racing. "Captain," she said softly, "you are extraordinary. You could lead any army in the galaxy." Ward shook his head. "I do not lead for glory. I lead because someone must. If I falter, others fall. That is enough reason." Valara felt a strange emotion rise in her chest, pride, awe, something like reverence. She had come expecting to see weakness. Instead, she had seen humanity at its strongest. Another wave of Dracul soldiers attacked. Ward positioned his people carefully, covering gaps and coordinating movements. Every shot he gave was precise. Every instruction he gave was clear. A young engineer, terrified but determined, tripped and fell. Ward caught her just in time. "Focus," he whispered. "You can do this. We all can." Valara realized then that the humans were fighting not for power or revenge. They were fighting for each other. Every action, every sacrifice, every decision came from love and duty. She began to write notes in her recorder. Humans are not warriors in the conventional sense. They do not fight for conquest or dominance. They fight for life, for hope, and for those they protect. Captain Elias Ward exemplifies this. One man holding a line that should not exist. Yet through his courage, ordinary humans become extraordinary. The Dracul commander grew impatient. "Finish them," the booming voice demanded. Ward raised his weapon, standing tall against the advancing enemies. "We are not finished. Humanity does not surrender." Valara watched in stunned silence as the humans moved with renewed energy. Ward's presence inspired every one of them. Teachers, farmers, engineers, and young soldiers all pushed forward, holding the line. For a brief moment, the battle seemed to pause. The Dracul hesitated, caught off guard by the humans' determination. Ward stepped forward, his voice rising above the chaos. "Stand firm," he shouted. "For your homes, for your people, for humanity." The humans answered him with a roar of courage, their voices joining together as one. The energy in the plaza shifted. Fear became determination. Doubt became resolve. Valara felt tears prick her eyes. She had expected to witness defeat. Instead, she had witnessed something rare, the spirit of a species refusing to break. As the night stretched on, both sides paused for a moment. The humans were weary, wounded, and exhausted, but they still held the central plaza. Ward looked around at his people, pride shining in his eyes despite the pain and danger. Valara approached him, her voice soft. "Captain, your people, they are warriors." "I see it now," Ward nodded quietly. "We are not warriors because we want to be. We are warriors because we must protect. That is all it takes." Valara thought about the countless species she had studied, the armies she had observed, the battles she had analyzed. None had fought like this. None had fought for hope alone. For the first time, she questioned her long-held beliefs. Humans were not weak. They were unpredictable, emotional, and messy. Yes, but they were alive in a way that no species she had known truly was. And in that moment, she realized the truth. Humanity's greatest power was not their technology or numbers. It was their heart. The first rays of dawn touched the broken walls of New Ceres. The once bright colony now lay in ruins, smoke rising from shattered towers, the air heavy with the smell of metal and dust. The battlefield was silent for a brief moment, like the pause before a storm. But deep within the colony's heart, the defenders prepared for what they knew would be their final stand. Captain Elias Ward stood among his people, his uniform torn, his armor scorched, but his eyes steady. Around him were men and women who had not slept for 2 days. Farmers, miners, engineers, ordinary people who now held rifles and makeshift shields. Their faces were tired but determined. He looked over the group and said quietly, "They'll come at sunrise. They'll expect us to break. Let's make sure they're wrong." A soft murmur of agreement spread through the crowd. There were no cheers, no shouts, only silent resolve. They had lost too much to waste energy on speeches. They all knew what was at stake, their families, their home, and the very idea that humanity could stand on its own in the vast galaxy. Not far away, Ambassador Valara stood near the medical shelter helping the wounded. Her silver skin glowed faintly in the early light, her large violet eyes filled with worry. The Cathari scholar had never seen such destruction. Her mind, trained for logic and peace, struggled to understand the human will to keep fighting when all reason said they should flee. Ward walked toward her. His left arm was wrapped in a blood-stained bandage, but he still moved with purpose. "Ambassador," he said, his voice calm despite the exhaustion. "You need to get the civilians ready. If we fail to hold the gate, you take them to the secondary tunnel. It'll lead you to the evacuation point." Valara turned to him quickly. "You cannot hold that gate alone. You are already injured. You should be with us." Ward smiled faintly. "Someone has to buy you time." Her eyes widened. "Buy time." You speak as if your life is something to trade. He shook his head slowly. Not trade. Protect. That's what humans do. Valara opened her mouth to argue, but before she could, the ground trembled. The Dracul had begun their final assault. The sky darkened with dropships descending through thick clouds of smoke. Metallic beasts landed outside the colony walls, their engines roaring. Thousands of alien soldiers marched forward, their weapons glowing red. Ward turned toward his men. "Positions!" he shouted. The humans ran to the barricades, behind broken vehicles, crates, and fallen walls. The old turrets powered up with a loud hum. The sound of boots striking metal echoed through the ruins. Valara wanted to speak, to tell him it was madness, but the words caught in her throat. She saw something in Ward's expression. Not despair, not fear, but a calm determination she had never seen in any warrior of her own kind. Then the battle began. The first blasts shook the ground, and the colony's defenses lit up in return. Red and blue bolts streaked across the field, striking armor and stone alike. Ward shouted orders, moving from one line to another, helping fallen soldiers, fixing jammed rifles, and pushing his people to hold their ground. "Keep steady. Aim for the gaps," he called. Valara watched from a distance as the fight turned fierce. The Dracul soldiers were larger, stronger, and far more advanced, but the humans fought with something the invaders didn't understand. Heart. Every person on that wall fought not just for themselves, but for the person beside them. As the hours passed, the defenders' numbers grew thin. Ammunition ran low. Explosions tore through the outer defenses. The gate began to crumble. Ward's voice came through the comms. "Fall back to Sector B. Keep them away from the civilians." Valara could hear his voice even over the chaos. It gave her courage. She gathered the civilians and led them into the tunnels below the colony. Children cried softly, and old miners limped beside them, but they moved because she told them to trust the humans above. When she reached the halfway point, she heard something in the distance, heavy steps and metal grinding. The Dracul had breached the lower section. Ward's voice came again. "Ambassador status report." She replied quickly. "We are halfway through the tunnel, but the enemy is coming from the north side." "Copy that," Ward said. "I'll hold them off." Valara froze. "No, Captain, you can't—" But the signal cut off. A moment later, the sound of gunfire echoed from above. Valara climbed back up the steps, ignoring the protests of the wounded. When she reached the entrance, she saw him, Captain Ward, standing in the corridor, blaster rifle in hand. He was covered in dust and blood, but still he stood tall. Dracul soldiers stormed in through the broken gate, firing rapidly. Ward took cover behind a collapsed beam and returned fire with deadly precision. Every shot he fired struck true. His movements were slow now, but deliberate, as if every second mattered. Valara hid behind a pillar, watching him. She wanted to run forward and help, but her body refused to move. She had seen battles before, but never like this. The Cathari fought with discipline and order. Humans fought with spirit, wild, stubborn, unyielding. A Dracul warrior broke through and charged toward the entrance where Valara stood. Ward saw it instantly. Without thinking, he ran forward, intercepting the alien and striking it down with the butt of his rifle. "Get them out!" he shouted to Valara. "That's an order." She hesitated, tears forming in her eyes. "Captain, you can't face them alone." Ward looked back at her, a faint smile on his lips. "I'm not alone. Humanity stands with me." Then he turned back to the enemy. The battle raged on. The Dracul advanced, but Ward fought like a force of nature. Each step they took, he pushed them back with fire and steel. Even when his weapon overheated, he grabbed a fallen enemy's blade and kept fighting. Valara finally obeyed his order, leading the civilians to safety. As she guided them through the tunnels, she could still hear the echoes of gunfire behind her. One man against an army. By the time she reached the evacuation point, she saw the human transport ships descending from orbit. Reinforcements had arrived. The sky filled with flashes as the fleet engaged the Dracul ships. The colony's defenders, what remained of them, cheered when they saw the enemy retreating. Valara rushed back toward the upper levels. Smoke filled the air, and the once bright sun was hidden behind dark clouds. She stumbled through the ruins, calling out his name. "Captain Ward, Captain!" She found him near the gate. The wall was half destroyed, the ground littered with debris. He was kneeling beside a fallen banner, the flag of New Series, his breathing heavy, but his eyes still open. Valara ran to him and knelt down. "You did it. The reinforcements are here. You saved them all." Ward gave a faint laugh. "Didn't save all," he whispered. "But enough." She took his hand gently. "You were wrong, Captain. You said you were only one human. But you were more than that. You were hope itself." Ward's gaze shifted toward the sky, where human ships now chased the Dracal away. His voice was quiet, but filled with pride. "Then humanity still stands." He closed his eyes, the faintest smile on his face. Valara sat beside him for a long moment, the sound of battle fading into silence. Around her, the colony still burned, but the people were alive. They had survived, not because of their weapons, but because of their will. She rose slowly, lifting the fallen banner and holding it high. "For humanity," she whispered. The surviving soldiers saluted as the sun broke through the clouds. Its light fell across the ruins, bright and warm, as if the world itself honored the sacrifice made there. Valara looked toward the stars and whispered softly, "Perhaps I was wrong. Humanity has warriors, not born of power but of heart," and in that moment she understood what it truly meant to be human. Weeks had passed since the battle for New Series. The colony was slowly rebuilding, repairing its shattered walls and broken streets. The fires were gone, the smoke had cleared, and the sun now shone on the green plains and glass domes that humans had worked so hard to create. Yet, the memory of the battle remained in every face, in every scar, and in every whispered story. Ambassador Valara stood in the council chamber of the Galactic Conquered, a massive room filled with beings from dozens of species. Some were tall and metallic, others short and furry, many covered in scales and a few shimmering with energy that shifted like liquid light. All eyes turned toward her as she prepared to speak. Valara had spent hours organizing her report, reviewing footage, and studying the humans she had observed. But no document or recording could fully capture what she had witnessed. What she had seen went beyond strategy, beyond discipline, beyond numbers. It was something far simpler and far greater: human courage. She stepped forward. The chamber fell silent. Her silver robes shimmered under the bright lights. The Cathari ambassador's voice, calm and precise, echoed clearly. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Conquered, I come before you today to report on the species known as humans and, in particular, their defense of the colony world New Series." She paused, letting the attention settle. "I once believed humans had no true warriors. I was wrong." A murmur ran through the room. Several species exchanged glances. Few had expected the Cathari to admit such uncertainty. Valara raised her hand for silence. "The humans of New Series faced a threat from the Dracal raiders, a force far superior in technology, numbers, and experience. Conventional logic would dictate surrender. Yet these humans did not yield. Ordinary civilians became defenders. Teachers, farmers, engineers, and children old enough to fight all took up arms to protect their homes, their families, and one another." She paused and looked at the council. And at the center of their defense stood Captain Elias Ward. Alone, he would have been overwhelmed. But he inspired his people to rise above fear, fatigue, and the overwhelming odds against them. His leadership, courage, and determination transformed ordinary humans into extraordinary warriors. They did not fight for conquest or power. They fought because they cared, because they refused to let life and hope be destroyed. A member of the Zephyrian High Council, a towering being with crystal wings, leaned forward. "Ambassador Valara, you speak of leadership and courage. But are these isolated incidents or a reflection of human nature as a whole?" Valara's violet eyes glimmered with certainty. This is the nature of humanity. They are flawed, emotional, and unpredictable. Yet within those flaws lies strength. They rise when others fall, endure when others surrender, and protect what matters most, even at great personal risk. What I witnessed on New Series is not the exception, it is the essence of humanity. The chamber grew silent. Even the most skeptical species listened intently. Valara continued. Humans are not perfect. They do not possess advanced fleets, flawless armies, or centuries of disciplined rule like the Cathari, but they possess something far more powerful, the will to survive, to protect, and to inspire others to do the same. In a galaxy where strength is often measured in weapons and fleets, humans remind us that courage and heart can be stronger than any technology. She paused, taking a deep breath. I have learned more from these humans than from any species I have studied before. Their strength lies not in their desire for war, but in their refusal to give up hope. Captain Ward did not fight for glory. He did not fight for conquest. He fought for life itself. And through his courage, he showed the galaxy the true power of humanity. A hush fell across the council chamber. Valara's words hung in the air, striking each species differently. Some nodded in respect. Others seemed moved for the first time by the simple truth she spoke. For these reasons, she concluded, I strongly recommend that Earth and its colonies be recognized not only as members of the Galactic Concord, but as a species capable of rising to challenges that few others could endure. They may not follow our rules perfectly, but they embody something far more ancient and necessary: hope, courage, and the willingness to stand when all seems lost. The council remained silent for a moment longer. Then slowly, the council chair, a being of shifting golden light, spoke. Ambassador Valara, your report is unprecedented. No Cathari has ever so openly acknowledged the strength of another species. Your words honor humanity. Your observations have given this council much to consider. Valara inclined her head. Thank you, Chair. I only report what I saw. Humanity is capable of greatness, if not measured by perfection, then by heart. The meeting ended, and Valara left the chamber. She returned to Earth, to the rebuilt colony of New Series, where the human survivors were restoring homes and teaching the next generation to look at the stars with hope. She walked through the streets, watching children play among the repaired buildings, engineers working on new power grids, and soldiers maintaining vigilance over the borders. Everywhere she looked, she saw the mark of resilience. She came to the center of the colony, where a small plaza had been rebuilt. In the middle stood a statue, a simple figure of a human man standing tall and proud, looking toward the stars. A plaque read, "For Captain Elias Ward, who showed the galaxy what it means to be human." Valara approached the statue slowly. She placed her hand on the cold metal and whispered, "Perhaps the galaxy still has much to learn from your kind." Ward, standing nearby, smiled faintly at her words. He had survived the battle, but he had no desire for recognition. "It is not just me," he said softly. "It is all of us. Every human who stood, who refused to fall, who protected someone else. They are the true warriors." Valara nodded. "I understand now. Strength is not only measured by armies or weapons. It is measured by courage, heart, and the will to protect life." He looked up at the stars. "And humanity will always stand. That is what makes us human." She studied the sky as well, feeling a quiet awe. The stars seemed brighter here, as if acknowledging what she had learned. She had come to judge a species she believed weak, fragile, and unprepared for the galaxy. Instead, she had discovered a force more enduring than she could have imagined. Valara spent the next few days with the humans of New Series, helping to rebuild schools and medics centers, listening to their stories and learning their ways. She realized that their strength was not just in battle, but in every act of kindness, every sacrifice for one another, every moment they refused to give up. When it was time for her to return to the Galactic Concord, she paused at the edge of the colony. She looked back at the rebuilt buildings, the laughing children, and the people working together. She smiled softly. She whispered to herself, I once believed humans had no warriors. Now I know. They do not seek war, but when called, they become the storm that protects what is precious. That is their true power. The shuttle lifted off, leaving New Ceres behind. Valara looked down at the planet, the blue and green surface shining under the morning sun. She carried a new understanding back to the stars. A report not of weakness, but of inspiration, not of fragility, but of enduring courage. And somewhere in the galaxy, the legend of humanity began to spread, not as conquerors, not as tyrants, but as a species that rises when others fall, that protects when others flee, and that stands firm when all seems lost. Valara's final words to her colleagues in the Conquered were simple, but they carried the weight of truth. Remember this: humans are not perfect. They are flawed, emotional, and unpredictable, but they are warriors in the truest sense. Protectors of life, hope, and courage. Do not underestimate them. Do not dismiss them. And above all, learn from them. As the stars stretched endlessly, ahead, Valara looked out the window and saw a small blue planet spinning quietly below. She knew humanity had a long path ahead, but she also knew this: wherever humans went, whatever challenges they faced, they would endure. And one day, the galaxy would remember not just their strength, but their heart.